The next type of join that we have is a self-join. And this is probably the second least common type of join that you're ever going to execute. A self-join is where you're joining a table onto itself. Now, generally speaking, but not always, this is going to be a sign of poor design, that if you're trying to join a table into itself, more often than not, you really wanted to take that piece of data and split that off onto a separate table. But sometimes self-joins can be good. For example, maybe I need to see all the products that are being created, and I'm looking for a list of manufacturers that produce multiple products for us, and I want to see each product that they're going to be manufacturing. Or I want to see employees that share a hire date, and I want to see each pair of employees. So this is where a self-join comes into play. Now there's two little things to note about a self-join. Number one is that the tables have to be aliased, which if you stop and think about it, makes sense because you're going to be using the exact same table twice in the from line. The second thing is you need to eliminate rows matching themselves. In other words, if I join on a column, when we get to a particular row, it's always going to match itself. Because after all, even if it's in two separate tables, it's still the exact same row with the exact same data. The way that this is done is by utilizing what's known as a non-equijoin, which is really just a very fancy way of saying that I'm not going to use an equal sign, that I'm going to use something else, a less than, a greater than, anything else. It really doesn't matter to make sure that we don't match on the items themselves. So for example, if we had an orders table, and we wanted to see orders that shared a common ship method, we would need to do a self-join. So what you'll notice on our results is that we've got both of our sides, left-hand side, right-hand side, and we've got the different order IDs and the ship method in the middle. So we've got express for orders 1 and 2, we've got standard for orders 3 and 4. Let's see how we could potentially do this on the AdventureWorks database. What I want to do is I want to find pairs of employees that were hired on the same day. So we'll start off by doing the from line. And again, I think this is just going to work a little bit better here. So for the demos, I'm going to start off on the from line. And I'm going to say human resources, employee, and let's go with left-hand side there. And then I'm going to say inner join in human resources, employee, and then right-hand side. Now, if you remember from before, one of the things that we mentioned is that if we have things split up into different tables, we can join them together in maybe ways that we didn't necessarily think of. This is going to be sort of an example of that, not based on different tables, but joining them in ways that we didn't necessarily think of. Because I don't have to just join on primary and foreign key columns. Yes, it's going to be the preferred way. Yes, it's going to be the way that I'm going to do it most commonly. Yes, it's going to be the best performant way in most scenarios, but I'm not required to do that. So what I could do is I could say on left-hand side, hire date equals right-hand side, hire date. Now, if I execute this like this, whoops, let's try and put in some columns there. Let's say employee ID as LHS employee ID. And RHS employee ID as RHS employee ID. And let's put the hire date in the middle. Let's just grab that from the left-hand side. It actually wouldn't matter which. Hire date. And put a semicolon at the end. Now let's execute. And now what you're going to notice is that I'm seeing my pairs of employee ID 1, employee ID 1. Well, of course, employee ID 1 was hired on 7/31/96, so of course he's going to match his own hire date. That's not what I want. So I need to filter out the self matches. And the way that I'm going to do that is by saying, and the left-hand side, employee ID, is less than the right-hand side, employee ID. So that will filter out the self matches. So now when I re-execute this, now you're going to notice that I'm getting back only the true pairs. So as it turns out, employees ID 8 and 9, employee IDs of 20 and 21, 22 and 23, and it's going to show me each pair. So you'll notice I'll see 22 and 23, I'll see 22 and 24, you'll notice I'll see 23 and 24. So I'm seeing all of my pairs.